back. Mark Shaver's back, and we are once again just chronicling another just insanely talented rapper turned actor. We are talking Earl Simmons, known professionally as DMX of the Rough Riders group. Welcome back, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Anytime. Yeah, we were talking West Coast last time. Now we're talking East Coast.
Now it's East Coast time.
It's kind of wild because, like Tupac, he's got kind of that same kind of dynamic. And all music even kind of talked about how he was kind of the hardcore rap heir, kind of to him in Notorious Big, but even describing him as a hip-hop version of Johnny Cash. And when I heard that, I was like, I'm not sure. But I do get it. I get that he is very poetic in terms of how he sums up his material. And
you know, DMX to me is another one that he always poured passion into his work. You know what I mean? He didn't try to change himself or change his style to fit with the times, and that's something to me. It's like I understand artists got to do that, but that's something I always really respected about him. He was just himself.
Yeah, there was never any shortage of him. Just early 2000s as well as the late 90s. He was working with Oinks, which Sticky Fingers was a part of, and then worked with Audio Slave later on. But yeah, after those free movies with Jet Li and Seagal for producer Joel Silver and Warner Brothers, is like then he was just pretty commonplace to see him doing a few independent films and direct-to-video nonsense while also doing a BET reality show. And that was all in between 2007 to 2012. And they would still try and find compilation albums and other unreleased remixes to just pay off some other legal issues involving, divorce and just rehab. And it's kind of a shame. But
yeah. I mean, it sounded like he was kind of coming back, trying to get his career back, his music career back in order or something.
The Jay-Z diss didn't
right before
help.
He died.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I mean, whatever he was into seemed to it just seemed to be something he just couldn't shake, which I understand. It's got to be tough to do it once you're in that. Once you go down that path, I hear it's hard to come back from it. So
you ever hear the conspiracy involving the Illuminati?
Not regarding DMX. I mean, I hear that all the time about this.
He just Jay-Z, and Jay-Z had connections. So next thing you know, his career just kind of evaporates. No one wants to offer him anything, and it just kind of sucks because like Jay-Z just can seem really petty at times, but he had the high ground in terms of he had the record music connections and was already a producer at that time. So if he didn't like you, he'd find a way to just kind of blacklist you. But
I'm not sure. I mean, I don't remember ever hearing anything about any disagreement or beef between those two. Not that there wasn't. Maybe there was.
It was like a pretty blunt interview once upon a time. I can't remember if it was like on the radio or just in person, but after like Free, they had it with each other.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I see they didn't really.
They did a tour together, but it was just, to share ratings versus actually combine together. Like, hey, we're homies for life. We're working together.
I do remember Jay-Z had taken some shots at Prodigy of Mobb Deep.
Right.
They were kind of going back and forth with some different diss tracks. That's about all. I mean, a couple of Jay-Z's albums from back in the 90s I definitely enjoyed. Volume 2,
And then he
Hard
was
Knock Life.
collaborating with every other hip hop or new metal.
Yeah, DMX was on that album. Eventually though, I don't know. I like the Rough Rider style a bit better than the Rockefeller style. Which, don't get me wrong, Rockefeller had some really good artists. I mean, Memphis Bleak, Beanie Siegel. I mean, those guys were really good. I mean, Jay-Z wasn't bad either. I'm not saying he was bad.
I used to get Belly mixed up with all the state property movies because they just were. It was like they kind of had some of the same kind of managers just starring a Universal or Lionsgate movie that's loosely based on your life. So by the time 50 Cent and plenty of others were just kind of coming around, it just was all second nature to me. I'm like, of course, you're only doing what DMX and Tupac have been doing for a while.
Yeah, I saw Belly a long time ago. I hardly even remember it, but
it was kind of more similar to one of DMX's later movies, Never Die Alone.
Yeah, I saw that one as well, which again, that's another one that I just don't really remember very well. But the other three main ones, I mean, I've watched many times, right? Romeo Must Die.
He just has a natural commanding charisma in that he just feels like whatever he's saying, he believes it, so therefore you believe it.
Well, yeah, that's a good point, and that's the thing. I mean,
because there's plenty of others who can't do that. Like if LL Cool J told you and is like, "Hey, I kick the shit out of people," he'd be like, "Nah, dude, you're just too nice and cool. I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all." So it's just like there's so many others where it's just like, for the most part, is like they kind of were just doing comedies or hood parodies, and it was just kind of just interesting to see him still kind of doing all these gritty movies, and they were able to make it work. And
yeah, I remember seeing the trailer for Romeo Must Die, back, I don't know, shortly before it came out, and I was already a Jet Li fan at the time, and then when I saw DMX, it was in that movie.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I was like, just the whole cast. I remember Delroy Lindo was in it, obviously Aaliyah,
Yep.
quite a few people, Russell Wong, etc. And yeah, I just remember that trailer was so cool, and I was like, oh, this movie's gonna be awesome. And looking back, it really was really good. I mean, a lot of people kind of shit on it. If a lot of the Hong Kong cinema buffs, like, no disrespect to anybody, of course, but everybody's welcome to their own opinion. I know that movie got a lot of flack for some of like the wire work and stuff. And yeah, there were a couple of like wonky moments with the wire work, but
I'll take it over Romeo and Juliet from '96.
To be honest, Jet Li, not to get off topic, but real quick, I mean, Jet Li's contemporary set films, I think his work outside of Hong Kong probably bested those, like especially like Kiss of the Dragon and Danny the Dog. But
he was trying different styles at that point, and
yeah, of course it's not going to be the same as his like period pieces like Fist of Legend, Once Upon a Time in China 2. I mean, those films are like really, really, I mean, it's really hard to top that kind of choreography. But
I can totally see why he got along with DMX. He was very much in that same kind of realm. This is before we found out Jet was suffering from arthritis and could only do certain kinds of stunts. And, DMX, it seemed, post legal troubles, was always getting pressure by managers to engage in like a street fight, and he would always back off. But he had kind of that same deal. Because he's got this image, Jet's been this image of Hong Kong in the 80s and 90s, and he's got to maintain it in the 2000s. Same kind of deal with X, where, he's really big and he's working with the Rough Riders and getting even people like the Lox Group and other people from Bad Boy Records and Rough Riders Group and even Eve, to appear on his tracks together. And so I think, like you're saying, is they're trying to make everyone happy, and that's impossible, but they're still, regardless of where you like the material or not, you just kind of have, I think he just slips through the cracks in that he's even if you're not a fan of rap music, it's just there's something about his anger that just sounds very fueling and illustrative of what picture he's trying to paint in every album. And
yeah, he presented. I think he presented some of the pain as well, like kind of Tupac was able to really like.
You can never forgive me, but I'm here for you. You know, it's
I
just
saw a really like a really you know, like I don't even know how to describe it, but there was an interview with DMX I saw where he talked about how I guess his mentor when he was a teenager had got him hooked on like crack.
I bet.
I believe that's what he said, you know, and you know he was just a kid at the time.
Yeah,
and it just sounded like that was some kind of a demon that he never was able to like fully break away from. And you could just hear the pain in his voice and that was pretty sad.
It was sad, but it was also just realistic because there's just so many people who think you're either a good guy or bad guy. Is like, and then there are people who are flawed. They mean no trouble by it, but they get into trouble and they want to find ways to be better because you can only pray to God so many times and just ask for forgiveness from your friends. So he was just kind of more the guys who were in between, poor and middle class, who were just trying to survive on inspiration and, like you say, just show how dark one's soul can be at times and how it seems like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And that's very empowering for many other people who are probably in a sticky situation and they realize, man, how do I get out of here?
Yeah. And I think like the fact that he, cause I mean, he obviously held religion to a high regard, like he would put the prayer skit on every album, and he has a great track called Angel that they played in the movie Exit Wounds, but it was from his album. And then there was X, where he had, I'm trying to remember the name, Regina Bell, maybe something like that.
He definitely had a lot of people from the Fugees, and I think that's why some of their music plays in Belly. That might
kind
be
of sounded like a gospel track almost, but that was one of those tracks where it did show like a sign of hope, you know what I mean? Like that was like an uplifting track
instead of one of the angrier tracks. And like get at me, dog. That's a fight song. And
yeah, I mean, he definitely had some really violent songs, you know what I mean? Like especially like in his first album. He was young.
My mind open.
And that whole album, It's Dark and Hell is Hot. I mean, I think that was, I mean, that was a dark album, you know what I mean? So, I mean, that's the kind of material you're going to get on it for the most part.
Well, and I'm sure it was overwhelming for him to just come from the underground rap scene around 94. And then next thing you know, you're with giant labels. And now, Swiss Beats is making sure he has a bunch of these good productions, and he's having to, again, do all these movies and he's kind of just like if Tupac got a second shot, kind of. And so he's getting all these labels, all this attention. And there were even still some people who, hadn't heard of him, but I think that was just more kind of the political and social presence. This was before Facebook, Twitter took over social media, and you were just hearing tabloids about people, And
a lot of time the media would love to focus on the negative, the legal.
More gangster rap music is causing our kids to shoot people. It's like, I don't think so, but okay.
Yeah. I mean, they always want to blame something, you know what I mean? Again, it's not to say no kids could be influenced by any of it, but for the most part, I mean, you cannot point the finger at music like that.
Yeah. So apparently his name DMX was actually from the digital drum machine. Like that was like the name of the brand, and everyone thought he meant Dark Man X, apparently. It's like, no, that's he was a human.
I never knew
beatbox.
that. I mean, I always thought it stood for Dark Man X.
Yeah, I think he kind of just, he didn't say it one way or the other, and this is from All Music, so I'll take that with a grain of salt. But he did get some kind of bashing for when, Flesh of My Blood, Blood of My Blood was, had the poster of him just covered in just that blood. And I think that's just when people were wanting to impose more censorship over a cover, when it's just like, you guys are going to complain regardless. You don't have to buy the album. I mean,
right.
If all these pop artists are going to be in cleavage, then yeah, you're going to probably see some albums. I mean, would you rather a gory body on the cover? This guy covered in blood.
Yeah, no, I didn't really see. I mean, it's definitely I don't know if you want to use the word graphic or whatever, but I didn't see anything wrong with it. Like, it's not like I think it works. It works for the title of the album. It's kind of one of those classic covers. It really brings the greediness of that album. Like, it puts it in picture form. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Funny enough, I remember I went, where did I go? I rode my bike or something to the mall back in the day, and I wanted to buy It's Dark and Hell is Hot. But I was only, 13 or something, and I remember the record store in the mall, at that time they were being pretty picky about, you had to be 17 to buy explicit lyrics.
Yeah, it was wild how someone would still get a hold of a video game, because you could always just have a cousin or someone else or some other parent who wasn't paying attention just buying it. I never knew how they got a hold of, say, a violent game like God of War or Grand Theft Auto, and it's just like, well, somehow they got it. Because
I remember, yeah, exactly. I mean, if kids want it or if people want it, obviously kids or young teenagers, they're
movies they would kind of take with a grain of salt, but unless it was very just graphic cover or pornographic looking cover. But yeah, on music, yeah, I would see some of them kind of impose it for a while, and then I think after a while they just stopped caring. Or like, I mean, there's the explicit advisory on the cover. I mean, if you want to buy it, if you can't see that,
Yeah, I mean, I went to the mall, and this is what I would do a few times around then, when you couldn't go in and buy it at that age. Find somebody in the mall who was old enough, give them the money, and ask them, "Hey, would you please go buy me this?" So I remember I gave some random person in the mall, like whatever the cost was, "Hey, can you go buy me DMX's album, It's Dark and Hell is Hot, on cassette?" At that time, I was still buying cassettes because they were cheaper.
there you go.
I didn't have a job. I was only 13. Well, that guy came back out and he gave me the bag, and he actually bought me Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood by mistake. So that's the first album that I listened to. And when I first listened to it, maybe because I was like disappointed that, hey, that's not the one I asked for. So I wasn't really feeling it that well. And then I went out, next time I went to the mall, I got It's Dark and Hell is Hot, and I really, really liked the album, But when I went back later, like several years later, I went back and listened to Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood again. Then I realized, wait a minute, this is.
I would
really
get those
album.
two definitely mixed up, especially with Year of the Dog. It was one of those like, wait, no, this is from '98, not '03, when he's at the second part of his career. Yeah, to have 9 giant studio albums and then a tribute album where celebs, various electronic and pop artists released stuff for him, including Nas, Jay-Z, and even Bono of U2. I did not expect that. That came out of nowhere. I was like, what?
Yeah, I mean, supposedly he had been working on that album like before he passed. It was supposed to, I don't know if it was supposed to be a comeback album or what.
Like,
it didn't really feel like a full album. It just felt, like you said, it didn't feel like a fully formed project or a finished album.
I was kind of angry because I was like, does his estate get much money from that, you know? Or is the record company making more? Because it just kind of came out of nowhere, and it just felt last minute, even if it was, like you say, you know, been in the works for a while. And I mean, I think that's just it. I think he kind of had just had very controlling, you know, PR team who were having to put up with both his bullshit and, you know, he had all these various health issues. I sometimes would get depressed around, I think, 2018. I think I just saw photos of him randomly and it's like, man, he had gained so much weight and just was almost unrecognizable. And it just was very sad when his death hit in, you know, April 2012, 2021. And
yeah,
it's like, man.
I remember reading an Instagram post from, I don't remember where I first saw it, but they said, you know, he was not in good shape. And yeah, I kept a close eye on how things were going, but unfortunately it sounded like, you know,
It's a
he
more
probably been without oxygen way too long, and you know, you kind of just felt like, you know how it's going to end. You know, basically, it sounded like he could have been brain dead already, and they were just kind of waiting to, you know, take him off life support. But
totally.
Yeah, that was a sad time. You know,
I just don't know if the media just didn't want to cover him anymore because the only thing you could really think about was just, again, his declining health and legal battles, divorce. And it's like, you don't know if they got pressure from the record companies. Hey, you know, stop talking smack about, you know, our artist. He's never going to get better with this negative press. But at the same time, I thought he had kicked drugs for a while, but he had just done so much damage to his body.
yeah, I'm not quite sure. I mean, I remember he had been like living in, like, I don't know if it was Phoenix or somewhere in Arizona for a while.
I think so, yeah, because he's from New York, you know, Mount Vernon, and then comes back, passes away in New York, but near, I think, Buffalo. And yeah, I did hear stories about him being in, like, filming a movie in, like, Georgia or whatever with people like Lou Diamond Phillips or Chris Christopherson.
Yeah,
those were kind of crapshoots. And then, yeah, I'd come to Arizona or some other place. On rare occasion, I would hear that he would do a concert, but I think he got kind of like people who are doing the convention scene. If you keep pulling out after a while, certain venues don't want to sponsor you because it's so much advertising and billboards to put up. And I think he pulled a few of those where he's like, I'm just not up to it, man. I can't do a concert tonight.
Yeah, he was always representing Yonkers, New York, on his music, and he, I mean, I guess that's where he really grew up, and that's like a little bit outside of New York City, but not real far.
Mm-hmm.
I remember leaving New York City one time, and, like, you know, wasn't too far out of the city. I remember seeing signs for Yonkers, so, but that was probably that was quite a few years ago now, probably 2005.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, when I lived in New York State, I would go down to New York City, you know, a handful of times. I got the chance, but, you know, I've never seen any East Coast artists perform. Not a single one.
I mean, you're hearing it on the radio nonstop, so that helps.
Yeah, I mean, I got a lot of their albums. I mean, I've got DMX, certainly. I mean,
There's two great songs on the Never Die Alone movie soundtrack that never made it to physical media. Like, you can find them on YouTube and Spotify, but they are not, there's no physical track of it, which is a shame because they are just really just energetic and intense.
you'd have to, yeah. What are the names of those tracks? Because I'm not sure. I don't even remember the movie that well.
Okay, so Go For It and King Thing.
Okay, yeah, no, I don't.
I'll play them, but I mean,
being a motherfucking pimp. Ain't about being a hustler. Nah. Player. Nah. Fiend. Nah. It's about being a motherfucking king. Alright? Yeah, I mean. Baby, it's a king thing. From Cato to David. Two kings in the street, neither one made it. Think about shedding a tear, niggas save it. Dirty motherfucking game, both niggas played it. David was on some bullshit, went full throttle. Smack Shorty in the face with the glass bottle. Killing bitches with battery gas. That's the type of shit this nigga mastered. David was a bastard. Flip out the stunts with the slow walk. Glide by niggas straight real, no talk.
They were just cool in that they, you know, see him play during the movie, let alone the trailer, and even the end credits, you know, just was very intense. It just complimented, and I'm kind of really just glad that, I mean, we talked about Tupac and how, you know, that was helmed by Spike Lee's former cinematographer Ernest R. Dickerson, who went on to do plenty of other cult movies like, you know, Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight, and has directed plenty of hours of TV shows like Bosch and The Wire, and to see him helm that movie and have some of his same character actors kind of appear in that, and it was very much kind of like DMX's Juice, where you got this, you know, pimp who dies and all these other sleazy characters who want to find out all the various people who are connected to it. And it was just a very complex mystery with some occasional action and crime drama elements, and I think it just really holds up pretty well because, just much like Belly, Roger Ebert really liked it because it was very much a noir kind of film.
Okay.
But,
yeah, I remember like it was like marketed as an action film or something from what I remember.
Yeah, and I don't think that was the best marketing of it. There is definitely some stunts in it, but it's more of a gritty just movie. There's some mild satirical elements because, much like his track, he does insert some other stuff in there where it's like, and guess what? The guy narrating this is a shitty person.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You know how we do. Talk to him, man. I mean, smack niggas around. I mean, let them know. It's my motherfucking house. Talk to him, baby. Let these motherfuckers know. Hey, yo, don't fuck with dogs. Dog is a beast. X, only nigga get love in the streets. This shit done fell off straight from the horse. Bullshit, hitting 4 mics in the store. I can't respect that. It's just how I feel. You know the truth when you hit, it's for real. Come on, what the deal? Like it don't show. Oh, yeah, niggas don't feel it when you coming back, man. Yeah, niggas play too many games, too many jokes without saying too many names. Provoke situations, but do me the same, and I'ma show you how a nigga stay true to the game.
Bet you didn't realize that. So it's like he does play some tricks in the movie through his narration and on-screen presence, and I think it just wasn't going to ever have a big crowd. You know, we had changed our standards so much, you know, by that point, to where it was just hard to market just older movies that would have probably killed it in the 40s to 70s, you know?
It's funny you mentioned that because that got me thinking about his character in Exit Wounds, how, you know, at the beginning you think he's this drug dealer or whatever, and then it turns out, you know, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen the film, but he's actually a good guy. He's like trying to document the crooked cops, and then he ends up teaming up with Steven Seagal.
Yeah, it's like that book came out in like 95 or something like that, and yet when it came out like the same year as Training Day and had some Lethal Weapon elements, and I was like, man, this is a very obscure book, and yet they made it into a wholly different kind of movie. And I think the reason a lot of people connect with it is just, you know, even though Seagal was just so infamous by that point, it didn't feel like a Seagal movie. It just felt like a Joel Silver kind of movie, kind of like Ricochet or Last Boy Scout, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it was right in that same vein with like Romeo Must Die and Cradle to the Grave, kind of, you know. I mean, it had a lot of the same cast members, right? Anthony Anderson.
Yeah, and Tom Arnold, always playing different people each time.
Yeah. Oh, and one thing I wanted to say, there was an artist with Rough Riders named Drag On.
Yeah, he's in those last two movies, and
yeah, he was.
Isaiah Washington is also in often playing.
He was
DMX's
definitely one
brothers.
of my favorites from the whole Rough Riders camp outside of DMX. And he, I follow him on Instagram, and he put something out there just recently. He said that DMX pretty much got him the part on Exit Wounds, and he said DMX basically told the producers, like, if you don't put him in the movie, I won't do the movie. Because he was kind of like DMX's like little brother, so to speak, not like real brother, but kind of looking out for him.
He couldn't live with himself if he couldn't give him a movie part, but it is kind of annoying because it's like he just didn't do movies at all after that one. It's just like, man.
Yeah, he was like he had a bigger part in Cradle to the Grave, where he actually got like the fight against Jet Li or something I think it was in like a subway?
He's the gadget guy. He sets up all the heists and
he had like the sniper rifle at the end, I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think they just should have gotten a better director, but they are just fun premises, and they had everyone's attention just because the trailers would just show literally all the action movie money shots in the trailer.
I'd say that was the weakest one, even though watching it again and again over the years, I enjoy it, but when it first came out, I thought it was like a little bit disappointing. I was hoping they'd have a little bit more of the because I think Romeo Must Die and Exit Wounds, even they were able to balance action, a little bit of actual drama, and some of the comedy elements too. Whereas
it was weird.
Brave, I felt it didn't hit on the dramatic level.
And the break the fourth wall at the end, where they're just talking about this sounds like a movie starring DMX or Steven Seagal. It's like, what is that about? It's like, it's weird. It's like, it's visually, it looks, again, like what many critics even echoed, is like, this is basically DMX's Commando. It's a Joel Silver joint. And you do feel him grow a little more as an actor on that one. But like you say, the story's kind of just barely there, and it's just all about the stunts. And I just feel like it didn't even take too much advantage of even the R rating. Like there's like one bloody scene, and
it was a softer R for sure. I mean,
I was like, I better see some awesome, fight scenes. And since, DMX can't fight, for the most part, it's just a stunt double and someone else riding the giant, dirt bike at the end. And I think it was just one of those, it's also like, it was trying to kind of be like a Jerry Bruckheimer like rival, because Bruckheimer and Silver already had that rivalry still going. And it's like, so you look at the trailer and you're like, so this has as low a score like critically, but as high an audience score as say something like Bad Boys or Beverly Hills Cop. And it like you say, like near the end is like, it does kind of feel like a Hong Kong kind of movie, because that's kind of where it's going for, where it's just an outrageous stunt fest. And it's just so wild how it kind of works better for Tony Jaa versus these kinds of movies, yet it's overall kind of in the same altogether vein, where you're just like, it's basically the same kind of movie. It's just your mileage varies based on what you want to see, but it is one of those, I have a love-hate relationship with them. I will watch them anytime they're on TV, because I just you can't take your eyes off the screen. They're just that crazy. This was before Fast and Furious got bigger. I was just like,
but even
crazy stunts.
Even the last time I watched Cradle to the Grave, and by now it was probably 5 years ago now, but it doesn't feel like it was that long ago. And you got to appreciate it. That's a film I can appreciate more now, because it's like, looking back, hey, it didn't really have a lot of CGI or anything, It was still made kind of at the tail end of where they were still kind of going more for practical effects. So,
and just the fact that they allowed them to do these kinds of crazy movies. And I saw so many movies around the same time that looked like they were almost emulating the covers to some of these kinds of mashups, and that was kind of the thing for a while, is like, take a bunch of Hong Kong stars and rappers and put them in a Matrix type kung fu flick. And I mean, there was this one awful one with Dwayne Martin and Vivica K. Fox, like Ride or Die, and I was like, is this like a sequel to one of these kinds of movies? It's like it's kind of for that same crowd, but it's like a direct-to-video crap fest. But around this time, also DMX was also doing one of those. He was doing a lot of video games. He'd be in those Def Jam, Fight for New York games.
Oh, yeah.
Where you play like a fictional version of himself. So it was kind of wild how he was just everywhere. He's doing like some TV guest spots like on NBC's Third Watch. And then around that, so 01 to 03, just big year. And he just, he'd appear in a game. And 50 Cent, I felt like kind of did the same thing, from 05 to 08. Just like, I'm going to do some of these movies or bit parts, and then I'm going to be in a video game where I'm playing an action movie version of myself, and you get to play as me, killing terrorists and gangbangers and crooked cops. And it's just like, that's kind of was just the deal. And like, I just wasn't surprised to see Snoop Dogg and some of those other guys get in on the action.
Yeah, those games, I mean, I know I played one of them briefly, but I never rented them. I never bought them. So I didn't really.
It was either that or do a Grand Theft Auto type knockoff. Like they'd had those, what were those other ones where it's like
Saints Row or something, right?
It was before Saints Row. It was this other one, True Crime, Fight for New York.
Oh yeah. True Crime,
Fight for LA, and you just see the cast, and you're like, holy shit, this is a big ass cast. It has
I remember when that game came out. And not that it's a bad game. I mean, it was a pretty solid game if you really look at it, but it's not Grand Theft Auto, It's not.
No, it's more like one of those narc games where you're just like, everyone was so quick to just label everything, and you're just like, there's just something for everybody. You want something grittier or more of a kind of a strategic kind of game. These are kind of what these games are. You go around, and you have to do some very heavy, narcotic busting kind of stuff. But yeah, it was just interesting too, because what giant voice acting talent they got for each of those. And you're just like, man, they got all these comedians.
Yeah, like Michelle Rodriguez.
Right, Michelle Rodriguez, Mickey Rourke, even Mariska Hargitay was in one of them. And it's just like, and
James
then they
Hong.
Yep. And then they did like a Chinatown, like, version of it with like Rick Yoon, and many people said it was like they changed the name so many times in development hell, but at that point they were trying to go for like Infernal Affairs or utter hard-boiled.
You're talking about Sleeping Dogs?
That's the one, yeah. And so I just found it interesting. Whatever movie scripts got abandoned, they would basically try doing a video game. And I mean, around this same time, I mean, not to get too off topic, I mean, Jet Li did that Rise to Honor game, and that was interesting because that was basically a love letter to all those John Woo type movies, as well as what his new image was, just doing other blockbusters like The One and Kiss of the Dragon and these DMX films. So it was interesting to see how.
I'm actually looking at that game right now. I got it right here in my little pile of games on one of my piles, I should say, on this bookshelf. But yeah, Rise to Honor
plays the hell out of it.
That's a great game. It really felt like when I was there day one to get that game, again, not to get off topic, but
one of the henchmen even looked like DMX at one point. I was like, was that a fun diss or something they did, or Easter egg?
That game was it really felt, at the time at least, like you're playing like a Hong Kong action film,
Yeah, and I think a lot of people just weren't ready for it, because just like some of the other fighting games, you gotta go crazy with the joysticks on the game controller. Is like, yeah, that's how you're gonna play. It's not A, B, or C combos,
I wanted to say this too, is I did notice after DMX passed that on Jet Li's official Twitter site or Twitter account, he did, whoever runs it, they did have a message put out saying, rest in peace to DMX, and talked about how Jet Li had enjoyed getting to know him. So
that's good. Because it's just always just very saddening when, again, you just see two people who seem electric on screen, and you're just like, yeah, but that was like the 20th take, maybe 40th take on a reshoot. And it makes it even look harder when you see certain movies and shows, like, and I would always hear about that and after the fact, and it was one of those when you rewatch the movie now, it's unfortunately unintentionally distracting. I think I'd see movies like Glory and some of these other films where you're just like, yeah, there's a reason they're not in the same shot. They just could not stand to be in the same room. I heard about even that with The Good Wife. These two just very talented actresses, Juliana Margulies and Arjun Panjabi, just fucking hated each other.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody say anything negative about Jet Li. I think all I've heard were positive things about him. And
yeah, and I think everyone was cool with having to double him because his Hong Kong choreographer Corey Yuan worked on these movies along with the Transporter films, and I think it was just one of those two. He was making a name for himself, saying, "Hey, you better credit me as the co-director because I directed all your action scenes in your movie, and you just directed all the other stuff." And I think everyone was making a name for themselves, getting respect, and versus when you see other people who we liked but kind of fell off for a while, like Pierce Brosnan and Antonio Banderas kind of struggled to kind of keep up the momentum before kind of just doing a lot of indie and video on demand and ensemble work because you play a giant franchise character and then that oyster evaporates and then you got to try a few different things. And I think Jet Li just kind of had it better than say other people who were big for a while there. And then Wesley, it's just such a shame that Wesley Snipes, for instance, had to do a lot of direct-to-video movies. And don't get me wrong, some of them were very enjoyable, but I think that's just it. I think he got too big a head, and he had a crappy tax filer, and he just thought, oh, I'm not going to pay anything. I'm like, no, you got to resolve this because someone wants to send you to jail. And it's such a shame that he had to share the same video store shelves as Van Damme and Seagal, and you're like, no, not even remotely in the same vein.
Another thing I wanted to mention, a couple things. Dion Lum was the choreographer on Exit Wounds, another guy from the Hong Kong film industry.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
I remember DMX mentioned on like the special features of that DVD, he mentioned that like he had a good teacher, like training him for the fight scenes. And I wonder too, I mean, they had to have taken this from, it's an old Chow Yun-Fat film from the 80s called Tiger on the Beat. The trick with the shotgun, and that film, Chow Yun-Fat had it on.
It does do that similar shotgun play.
Bungee cord, and in Exit Wounds, DMX ties his belt around the trigger of the shotgun and like throws it up in the air, and I mean...
And being open to all that kind of mentoring, and it almost makes you wonder, is like, because like Tupac was always getting in fist fights and violent standoffs with other rivals, and each time he was trying to study kung fu, he just wanted to get close to just some chick who was studying it. And it does kind of make you wonder if I always wish if Tupac and DMX could have been in a movie together. Like, that is a fan cast for me, where I'm just like, what could have, should have been. Like, you just knew they could have been in a movie together, and it would have been kind of cool. And there's plenty of other movies around the same time that kind of came out, like In Too Deep and just all these other Point Break and Menace to Society type movies. And sometimes it just made you wonder what would have happened had they been in the roles. And I mean, DMX has some other movies that are underseen, like he unexpectedly shows up as the lover of the drug addicted mom in this one film called Pimp. And it's just like, he just pretty much at that point, he just had to get roles that weren't too different from what he was doing or that required little effort, which is a shame because this is just another guy who, again, he just has such a huge music career that it just feels bigger than he actually is. And, thanks to Hollywood magic, he was able to kind of look respectable for a while before, starting some bad movies. And like, there's this one where he's fighting like a Komodo dragon or some shit, and it's just very amateur hour. It was like, man, even by Sci-Fi Channel standards, this is bad. And
I didn't even realize it until not that long ago that he had come back to do more movies. I thought for the longest time, I thought Never Die Alone was the last one he did. And then
it was definitely the last one that got theatrical screening. The rest of the time it was like made for TV or at a festival,
I kept up with his music. I mean, even until Year of the Dog. By that time, the Rough Riders run, it was really slowing down. And after that came out.
And yet you got the love from his material because you'd hear comedians use his music or athletes still use his material as like a opening track when they're running onto the field, or even, for God's sakes, Deadpool used it prominently.
X gonna give it to you. Yeah.
So it seemed like his greatest hits would just always be featured on some kind of party remixer. And
yeah, exactly. Like Party Up in Here. I mean, that track, you hear that all over the place still. Rough Riders Anthem. I mean, some of those really big classic tracks, they become like timeless. So
they really are. There's plenty of times where I'll play an instrumental version of them just to get for the podcast edit. It just, for whatever reason, it makes you want to just go out and just like get in a street fight with someone and become an action movie god. And it definitely is pretty cool workout music. So I think that's just it. It's like, it's cool that he had his moment in the sun. It's kind of a shame that it didn't get bigger from there. And then at the same time, like, he's more talented than he probably realizes. And I mean, I totally agree with some critics. He kind of had that kind of certain appeal, kind of like Ice-T, where he's just like, he just has a certain honesty to him. He's not pretending to be a good guy or a bad guy, and definitely can applaud him more than, say, someone like Coolio or Busta Rhymes, where you're hired to just play yourself, in a movie or TV special.
The other thing I got to say, it's not to talk trash about anybody, but we all got what we like, and I had to give him credit. Although I heard I heard that he later said something different, but I remember there was some interview where they had asked DMX what he thought about Drake, and instead of going what could have been potential like kiss ass type of celebrity Hollywood type of oh yeah, he's great, I love his music and this and that. I mean, he flat out said, I don't like the guy. I don't like his music. You know what I mean? Now I heard he later retracted that and then said maybe he did like him or something, And
I think that's the other thing too. He still had that, part of the respect is unfortunately, part of the game where you do kind of have to do a diss or be bluntly honest, much like a politician or whatever. That's how you gain your fan base. But at the same time, it's like he's got health struggles, he's got legal troubles, and then unfortunately he'd get in one of those interviews and it's like, I got to retract it, I got to apologize without necessarily apologizing, just saying I might have gone a little too far. And it just stinks because it's like, so basically you're on a tight leash here and there. It's like, what can you do? What can you say at a public appearance that won't be embarrassing? And I think that's just it. I think because he was just kind of elongating just in career hell at that point, he was getting a bunch of those incidences where he'd be announcing a concert or some other live event and then retracting on it. And same deal with interviews. It's like, oh, I might have said that. And so I think I just was never really surprised when I would see a more recent interview with him, and it was almost always at like a local radio station versus something bigger, like, at the red carpet or whatever. He kind of just stopped getting as many of those mainstream invites. He wasn't going to perform at like a Super Bowl necessarily.
Right.
Which stank because he would have totally probably dominated. I would have much rathered him at a Super Bowl versus, all these other country and pop music stars.
Oh, no. Yeah. No doubt about that. No, it is a shame, at the same time, it's like, I don't know.
Just got to be happy for what we got,
Sometimes some of that Hollywood, click type of stuff, it sometimes just comes across a little bit fake. And I mean, you gotta admire that. I mean, even though, of course, DMX was in Hollywood, but like to me, I never felt like he came across like he was like he thought he was like better than anybody else.
He definitely deserved better because compared to so many others who just would notoriously just be outspoken or just, I mean, I'm looking at you, Kanye, where it's just like just known for being a douche and just selling out everything, and everyone hate watches you as many as the people who love you. And it's just like, I can't think of anyone who really hate watched his material unless they just were unimpressed with one of his movies. They still could kind of respect him as a talent to withhold. And it just seemed like there's just so many of these other guys. It's like, I mean, Soulja Boy was on that tribute album for his death, and I'm like, not Soulja Boy, Lil Wayne. And I was like, yeah, but those guys are kind of 1 and 2 in the. It's like, who told these guys these guys could rap? And I would see people like Ice Cube, Ice-T, and even Mobb Deep just kind of talk about them and just be like, yeah, these guys are not.
No, I mean, I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, hey, everybody's probably good at something. I don't think Lil Wayne is a great rapper. Has he made some decent verses? Yeah, I got to give him that credit. I mean, I don't hate the guy. I mean, I'm not a fan of him though. Like, I wouldn't buy his albums. Same with Drake. But that's just not my. They don't really appeal to me, But they're gonna appeal to 300
Drake is more of a.
So
Drake is tough because he's kind of like more today's country stars, where it's like they're supposedly trying to be a throwback to the genre, yet definitely more of electronic pop kind of mashup. And he's interesting in that he's kind of been more popular on the social media platforms, but his music's like it or hate it. And then I was kind of one of those more guys who just like, I would just see stories about him hanging out with underage people, and I was like, that sounds a little shady to me. So.
Yeah, I mean, with like Lil Wayne, I get the sense that like, I don't know.
He got into it very young, and so therefore it's for the millennial crowd, and he was never going to appeal to any hardcore rap fans.
Right. And again, I'm not trying to throw shade on him. I mean, he did a track with YG that I thought his verse was pretty good on that one. But for the most part, yeah, I mean, nowadays I can't get into anything anymore. Like I can't get into new artists anymore. I mean,
yeah, it's the alternative music scene's often the best because you'll get a lot of guys who are kind of just breaking through the barriers, and that's just how you have to do it because every local station that's funded by donations and everything is going to play more of that. And I'm never surprised when some of those end up winning some Grammys because it's like the only music that you're really getting some thought put into the lyrics versus what's on all of your main stations, which are just whatever just got played in a popular movie or someone on Broadway.
To Drake and to Lil Wayne's credit, I mean, they're not like so terribly dreadful, like compared to like, some of the stuff that's come out in even more recent time. I mean, those guys have been around a while now, but like all these like little guys, like Little Pump, Little whoever, you know what I mean? Like
Little Kim, who was kind of with the Rough Riders at times. Yeah. And
but all these like young kids with the face tattoos and the multicolored hair and I mean, if that's your style, go for it. But it's not about, I mean, it just seems like everybody's copying each other. And then when it comes down to it, let's look at the lyrics. Let's look at the music. And that shit sucks. Like Gucci Gang. I mean, come on, man. That's trash. That is pure trash. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. Like that song, That's trash, man. That's trash.
They're the Rebecca Blacks of the rap scene, but especially Soulja Boy. When Soulja Boy came out, it was one of those like, this is not music. This is known for being up and in your face, but it's not. Zero thought put into it. And I mean, I'm sorry, Nicki Minaj is kind of the same kind of deal too. I know many who are inspired by her and Lil' Kim, and I'm like, I can understand Lil' Kim's issue. I can't understand Minaj because
I think Nicki Minaj, like, if she just tries to rap normally, like, she doesn't sound that bad. But when she gets off on all this like weird, like trying to like sound funny or weird and like this Barbie thing or whatever's going on, like it's like a gimmick, you know, and it comes across as like annoying. So I don't like it.
It's weird because it's like Rihanna was kind of going more for like the mix of R&B and everything, and I heard it was a cool person and all, and I think her bad gal image with Minaj just kind of got up to her, where it's just like, I'm not digging the rap tracks, even though she probably could rap if she wanted to. So it was kind of much like the Miley Cyrus thing, where it's just like, okay, you guys might have some talent, but what you're doing is anything but talented. So I'm going to wait a while.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, stick to what you're good at, right? Stick to what you're good at. I mean, not everybody.
Like Cardi B was a reality show star. I don't know who told her you should start acting or rapping. So, and
everybody's good at something, you know.
Everybody's good at something. Well, that's just it too. It's just like I've lost track of how many times we saw some of these record producers who would start trying to do music and it wasn't doing that all that great. And then we saw, you know, we talk all the time about film, and I think we've lost track of how many times we've seen people who work with stunts or camera work or writing, and they try directing, and we're just like, oof, that was rough.
Yeah, and at the same time, like what I like, what you like, what whoever likes, it's going to be different. It's going to differ from person to person. So I'm not going to go out and buy Nicki Minaj's new album or Drake or Lil Wayne or any of those guys, right? But, you know, I know they got tons and tons of fans. So, I mean, obviously there's millions of people that do like it.
Oh, 1,000%. Like,
you know,
it's only when something underperforms that you're not hot shit anymore. And in all fairness, the industry is going to keep being cutthroat. And it's just hard to predict too. I'm never surprised when some of these guys come out with a memoir and we're just like, oh, so that's why you did this part of your messy career, or why you took some time off, just getting your mental state together. Is like, yeah, it's going to be, and I think that's just it. DMX just didn't have any breathing hour. And any time that he did have away, he didn't have any other role models other than, you know, God to look up to. And it's like, yeah, he needed someone else to just really help him through the ring. And I wouldn't be surprised if we hear another life story years later. Is like, here's what we tried. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a Netflix documentary about by his widow or someone else who worked with him. So
yeah,
I would definitely see it. I would totally see it.
Yeah, I mean, those kind of things that got to be done, right? I mean, I'm glad they didn't rush out and do one trying to be like a
oh, that would have pissed me off. That would have been like, we don't have all the facts here.
Like, let's look at the they did that one on Selena, right?
Oh yes.
The
singer
Netflix, the Netflix series. And I didn't really know a lot about her. My wife is a fan, so
she was very unimpressed with it.
No, actually, she liked it. And, you know, I mean, I know a lot of people didn't like it, but I went into it kind of not knowing much, and I enjoyed it. And it got me because I hadn't really listened to her music. So,
I mean, it depends, because, like, I was very impressed with some of the newer CNN documentaries, like the 80s and 90s. But then there were some when they got to the movies where it's like, yeah, but you barely, you know, got the entire roster there. You kind of skipped over a bunch of stuff. And it's never 100%. I mean, I'm always happy that there is some kind of documentary regardless, but there are other times where it's like, yeah, that's a good starter documentary, but they exaggerate on this or that and got it out of whack. And once people start, listing it in the IMDb trivia or on Wikipedia, then, where do you go from there? And now you got to, it's almost much like the Tupac and Biggie stuff. Everyone wants to know more, and yet you got to get close to someone if you really want to have a really good documentary. And then you got to be able to have a good film crew who can make the documentary interesting and fund it, and people actually come out and see it.
Yeah.
It's also just hard to gain interest because half the time it just seems like documentaries are just taking footage from other documentaries of the 70s and 80s.
That tends to be the case, but
because no one buys DVDs anymore, Blu-rays. So,
I'm sure we'll probably see something else in the future. Like you said, like a Netflix series or something. And probably some years down the line.
They did it with Bruce Lee, so I wouldn't be surprised. I think they'll totally just give it 10 years. They're probably starting on it now, and it's gonna be a while.
Yeah, I mean, they probably got to go through different legal hoops, get permission, and
unless you want to do the unauthorized documentary, that could totally kill on YouTube or what have you.
Yeah.
In fact, hell, you or I, if we wanted to, and it would be a lot of time and money and hours spent, we could literally just spend a year in development of interview people close to, DMX, and that would be a while because then you would have to remaster the sound, make sure the commentary is good and organized, and then it would be, and now after that we're doing this. This is like, and that's just it. You gotta, half the time when people start stuff like this, they gotta take it in waves, because if it's not legal or having to do the disclaimer, hey, unauthorized, or nonprofit, then you also have to say, but I really want to introduce people to stuff like this and learn about it,
Right.
And you would see, even with some of those documentaries that were about TV shows, like they did one on Star Trek Deep Space Nine that was really good, that keeps getting rediscovered. And it was one of those where when they started it, they weren't ready to start. And then when they finally had to get underway, then they were just trying to find the narrative, how to change it and actually make it different than any other documentary on the subject. So some stuff it's really hard to schedule and then get everyone in the zone. We're ready, let's go.
Yeah, I'd always be interested in hearing what some of the people, what kind of experience did some of the people have that worked with DMX on his movies have, right?
And then if you're going to talk with people who know some of these rap moguls, then it will get to, oh shit, you can't print that. I'm going to get in some legal trouble. So you might run into something like that, or another hiccup, or and then you also got to decide, well, I know they wanted to print this. I feel like this works better for the narrative, and that can just be, word of mouth. And then sometimes people do want the raw, uncut deal, and then, like you say, you still need some legal paperwork to just kind of show, hey, we don't endorse these views, we're just sharing them.
Right,
because we're just trying to get to the heart of the matter, and unfortunately, some of the record companies might not like what they're hearing, and it's just like you get that disclaimer whenever you put in any kind of documentary or movie with some special features. They always say the studio does not endorse this, but yet we're distributing it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
oh, it's hard, but I think you're on to something. I think we're going to see something. I think we're going to, and it would kill. And there's just enough people interested in this person who, I even see people who aren't really crazy into rap who were just like, yeah, that dude was a pretty cool actor. And something's got to be said for someone who everyone acknowledges in pop culture in some way, shape, or form, or fashion.
Yeah, he was here in town maybe 2000, Well, it might have been 2018. It was like a few years back.
That sounds about right. I definitely would hear his show.
Looking back, I wish I would have gone. You know, I thought about going, but you know, it didn't work out. I would have had to take a night off of work or something, and you know, so I didn't take the opportunity to go. But looking back, because you never know, like, oh, maybe we'll catch him next time. That wasn't to be.
Right. Thanks a ton for being on here. I feel like we have talked everyone's ears off. Any other closing thoughts?
No, not really. I mean,
keep forwarding those tracks, guys. Keep DMX's legacy alive. You got Spotify. Anyone you encounter, any nephew or cousin who doesn't know about him, get one of his songs up on loudspeaker. Put it
yeah,
on
I think his work
playlist.
Speaks for itself. You know, I mean, I think he definitely left behind a lot of stuff to check out. If
watch his movies, even watch his reality show. It's an interesting man.
Definitely.
We'll return after these messages.
Do you ever find yourself thinking about who would win in a fight between Goku and Superman? Hi, I'm James Gavsey, and on the Who Would Win show, me and my co-host Ray ignore anything important happening in the outside world and debate fictional battles between characters from comics, movies, and video games.
We got a new show every week, and almost always am I the winner.
Yeah, not true, Ray.
In the past, we've discussed such matches as Captain America versus Darth Vader, Solid Snake versus the Iron Giant, classic matchups like RoboCop versus Terminator, and even the Muppets versus Sesame Street.
That one was crazy. So if you're a fan of geek culture and love a spirited debate, check out the Who Would Win show wherever you get your podcasts, or check us out at whowouldwinshow.com.
We let things pile up in the DVR, we add them to our queues, we wait for the DVDs and Blu-rays. We time shift. The Time Shifters Podcast. Sci-fi, horror, fantasy, superheroes, comedy, action, film, television, maybe some not-so-current events. Find us on iTunes or at timeshifterspodcast.com.
Cool thing about Blind Knowledge is we are in multiple countries. We are worldwide all across the globe. We are in the US, we are in the UK, we are in Canada, Germany, India, Japan. We're in Australia, y'all. BlindKnowledge.com. Now back to the feature presentation.
Dragon Ball Z, One Piece, Naruto, all things that we love, all manga that were originally published in the legendary magazine Weekly Shonen Jump.
But not every series can run for 300 chapters and have a hit anime. This is David.
This is Jordan.
We're the hosts of Shonen Flop. Each episode we look at manga that ran in Jump that didn't quite make it.
We discuss what it did wrong, what it did right, how the series could have turned itself around, and ultimately, was it a flop or not?
We're on all your favorite podcast apps, and you can find us at shonenflop.com.
Keep on flopping, floppers.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up